What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart. Today, I'll be breaking down the six-game NBA slate here on DraftKings. Hope you guys are having a good Monday. I'll be doing a game-by-game breakdown, as well as touching on a few early low core plays that I like for tonight's slate. So make sure to hit that like button. Do really appreciate all the support recently. It's been great. We've been getting close to like 30, 35 likes a video. So if we get 35 on this video, that'd be fantastic. And yeah, let's get into this breakdown. Make sure to check out my price picks video, which will be out after this. Recapping last night, did not cash. So now the streak is what, 5 out of the past 7 days I've cashed. Yesterday was just super, super low scoring. Wasn't really too heavily involved in keeping up with the player injury news. I was just watching NCAA all day. So I just threw a lineup into like a 25 cent tournament just to see if it would cash. And I got absolutely destroyed because Anthony Davis was just god awful. But looking to hop back into this nice fresh new week here. So hopefully you guys are off to a great week here on a Monday. Mondays usually suck, but hopefully you guys, are doing a little bit better than usual today. But yeah, we finally have the 100K to first back again after the weekend. It was 50K to first for a few days there. But moving on to this Indiana and Charlotte game. In terms of DFS, this is looking fantastic. Obviously, a great game environment here between two very bad teams that don't like to play defense, and they both like to play decently fast. So, with that in mind, Turner, Hield, Nemhard, McConnell, kind of this whole team here on the Indian side looks very, very appealing. Now, the big news here that we keep an eye on is going to be Benedict Mathurin and Chris Duarte, because if they're back, it's really going to shake things up. So, in terms of standout plays, I think everyone can agree Miles Turner at 7,300 against Charlotte, a team that you like attacking bigs with. He looks fantastic. If he can stay out of foul trouble, he should see at least 30 plus minutes, maybe closer to 35. And we know he has huge upside, 60 plus. So I do really like Miles Turner here. He looks fantastic. Going to be super popular, but for good reason. In terms of the rest of the team, obviously we have to wait for that Mathurin and Duarte news. Now, if Mathurin's back, it really eats up a lot of the usage off the bench, which kind of takes a hit to guys like who's been coming off the bench. Brissett's been coming off the bench a little bit. Same thing with Jalen Smith. Um, Even some of the starters, like he'll play alongside some of them. So it's just kind of a big hit to all those guys. Just a little bit less usage. Like Noara, he's been starting. He's been doing decent. I don't mind him averaging about 30 fantasy points per game the past few games. Same thing with Naismith. They've both been doing very, very solid. But still, I think right now the standouts to me are going to be Turner there at 7,300. McConnell, 6,100. He's still not starting, but he's coming off the bench. Um, you know, he's still, even with only scoring 6 points, he's still put up 31 fantasy points. He's just an absolute beast at point per minute. So I love him at 6,100, still in a great matchup. And then I don't mind Mathurin as like a solid tournament play. If he's not on a minutes limit, I think he looks pretty decent. Could get the upside to 30 plus minutes. So he looks okay. But right now, really just going to focus on Miles Turner and probably TJ McConnell. Sure, you can get to these other guys. They're strong plays and a great matchup, but I think the main two guys that are super, super solid, pretty solid floors, very high ceilings are TJ McConnell and Miles Turner. But Noir and Naismith have been great recently, so I don't mind them as well. Moving on to the Charlotte side, obviously Terry Rozier or Kelly Oubre, they both look really, really, really good. I prefer Oubre just because he's a little bit cheaper. He's scoring dependent at times. Obviously, doesn't do as much playmaking as a guy like Terry Rozier, but this is where the offense is going to come from. These two guys, so I do like loading up on at least one of them, if not doing like a full game stack here with kind of just what we have with injury news so far with this slate. It's looking like the best game to target. Also, that Sacramento Utah game looks great. I mean, Golden State Houston looks great. So we have a lot of great games to target. But yeah, Rozier, Oubre look like two of the best plays right now. I'm going to throw Oubre into my lineup, but really like both of them. It's kind of the same thing with the secondary plays on the Charlotte side. They all look like pretty strong, like Hayward, Washington, even Nick Richards, who's coming off a few tough matchups, Cleveland, Minnesota. But before that, he's getting close to 30 minutes, almost average a double double as well. So I think he looks a little bit too cheap there as well at 5,100, and a great matchup here against Miles Turner. So I do like him because Mark Williams is still out. So I'm gonna throw him in there. And yeah, the rest of the team just more strong secondary plays like Hayward, Washington, Dennis Smith Jr. Sure, you can land on those guys, but right now, really just prefer the top three options of Kelly, Rozier, and Richards. Moving on to Chicago and Philadelphia. Super tough matchup for Chicago. DeMar has been doing better recently in the past 3 games. Excuse me, past 4 games. Didn't know he put up a 80 bomb there against Minnesota. But yeah, he's been doing great the past 4 games, as you can see. Price has really jumped up to 8,700. Zach Levine dropped down a little bit here in terms of just like output, 7 of 22. Obviously, he brought it back with 39 points, but then 18. So a little bit more up and down, 8,300. I don't mind them. These guys are just all going to be strong contrarian options on the board today. So if you want to land on them, you can definitely do it. Vooch looks decent, but it's a very, very tough matchup against Embiid. So yeah, I'd say the Bulls are just very, very strong secondary contrarian options on this board if you want to get to some pieces that are going to be pretty low owned. Pat Bev, sure, you can get to him at 4,400. I don't think it's needed right now on the slate to force that. Pat Williams, kind of the same thing there. It's really just getting to kind of the top three main guys, and that's it. Now, if Caruso, if he's not going to play, Io will probably slide in the starting lineup for him. Sure, you could get to Io there at 3,400. Maybe get a few more minutes of blowout run. And then a guy like Kobe White off the bench, I think he makes for an interesting GPP play. We know he's upside, he's scoring dependent, but he's been seen about mid 20s minutes the past like 2 months. So I do think he's a solid GPP play here. In a game that could get out of hand, he could get more minutes, or he could be the reason off the bench if he's doing well that he keeps him in the game. So I do like Kobe White there. He's really standing out to me right now. Moving on to the Philadelphia side, obviously a fantastic matchup here for Embiid and Harden. They always look like great spin up plays. As I always say, if you want to gain leverage on the field, you could definitely play both of them as like two spin ups in your lineup. Maxi, Harris, more just okay secondary options now. Maxi coming off a huge game. They both should see 30 plus minutes. It's just, it's hard getting to them at their price tags when you can just get to Harden and Embiid. There's really no need to get to them right now when they're priced up. Back when they were like 5K, 6K, sure. But now that Harris is 6K, Maxi 7,400, I think it's just a little bit too forced for me to get to them right now. And with, excuse me, Peter Tucker questionable, sure you can get to McDaniels. He makes for a decent value play. Minutes have kind of been all over the board recently, but with no Tucker, if he starts, I do like him to see maybe 20 minutes, if not a few more. So at 3,100, you could definitely look to him as a value play. Moving on to Minnesota and New York. Big news is Anthony Edwards. If he's out, who did they start last time? I think it was Gobert, Anderson, Conley, McDaniels. I think it was Torian Prince, and he was god awful. Yeah, he was 1 of 7, 8 fantasy points. So it's to keep an eye out on that starting lineup. If they start the lineup again, I don't mind going back to Torian Prince at 3,400. He's just super cheap. You gotta in DFS, you gotta throw the last game out the window, especially when guys do very bad. Now Torian Prince is not one of those guys who can go out there and average like 25-5, but he can definitely pay off his price tag at 3,400. So he's interesting. I think McLaughlin is super interesting as well. I actually played in one of my lineups, played 24 minutes, was pretty solid, 20 fantasy points. So once again, if this game gets blown out, or if they just need some scoring, he could be a guy off the bench who could provide a spark. He's like not as good as a Noel, but kind of the same thing where they come off the bench, they're just good at getting assists, they're good at scoring. So I do like him a good amount. Walker was super, super chalky last slate. Not really sure why. I think a lot of people expected him to get a huge tick in minutes, and he just did not. So you can definitely look at him 3,500, seen about 25 or 20 minutes. He looks decent. Obviously, the big news is Edwards and Gobert. If Edwards is out, obviously we're going to get that same starting lineup as I mentioned about a minute ago. If he's in, I think he looks decent, but there might be a minutes restriction. Also, not the best matchup against the Knicks. There is some blowout risk here. Gobert, if he's out, we should get Naz Reid starting. Obviously, he's super foul prone, but if he's good to go, I do really like him. He's also an interesting play off the bench. He played 20 minutes, but got 28 fantasy points. Was super, super good at scoring the ball. So I think him and Anderson might be my favorite plays right now. Just a lot to deal with here with the injury news. So I think it's just more just like we kind of have to bookmark it, wait for the injury news. But I think Anderson and Naz Reid are kind of the most interesting ones. And then we can kind of dip a little bit down deeper into like the McLaughlin, Prince, and Walker range if there's no Anthony Edwards. So keep that in mind. We'll have to come back to that later. New York Knicks, Randall looks fantastic here in this matchup. Same thing with Brunson. He's been super, super solid. He got off to a super hot start in that first quarter there against Denver and really cooled off. I think he had like 16 points in the first quarter. He didn't really do much the rest of the game, but yeah, he's been great at scoring the ball recently. And I love this matchup. So I really, really like Brunson here at this price tag at 7,500. Him and Randall look great. Sure, you can land on a Barrett or Josh Hart or Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson has been slumping recently, but we know he's huge upside. And if Gobert plays, I do like Mitchell Robinson at 4,500. That's way too cheap there. You'd have to make there's a lot of good center plays right now. Richards, Turner, Mitchell Robinson, who's obviously the riskiest of the bunch, but We know he has 35 plus upside, even to the 40s. So definitely keeping an eye out on that. If he, yeah, just definitely keeping an eye out on that. Moving on to Dallas. Luca questionable, Kyrie questionable. If one of them or both of them are back, I think Kyrie played that last game there against the Lakers. Yeah, 56. If he's by himself, I think he's a great spin up. Then we can look to like a Josh Green, who would be a decent price tag player there at 5,300, even though they're pretty much fully healthy now. So I think Kleber is a solid, safe value play down there. That's about it. No real interest or need to get to anyone else. Sure, you can land on these guys as filler pieces, but with Kyrie back, it's pretty much just taking a shot on Kyrie and then maybe going to Kleber as value. But if Luka's back as well, it's really just Luka and Kyrie. That's really it. Not a lot of interest there on Dallas. Moving on to Memphis. Obviously, there's some blowout risk here too if there's only Kyrie, if there's neither of them. On the Memphis side, Jackson Jr. is questionable. That's big news because if he's out, it should probably open up. I would assume Santi Aldama starting at 3,700, who's already been seeing about 20 minutes a game. He'd be a decent value play. He wouldn't be like a lock and load. We've seen times where he does start and he's just been god awful, but he'd be a very, very solid value play there. But yeah, Bane should see a bump. Tyus Jones should see a bump. They're still a little bit too cheap for their expected usage. So I do like both of them here and a decent matchup against Dallas, who does play a little bit slow. So kind of evens out. But then I guess Tillman, Brooks, Luke Kennard, they've been fine value. Luka Bernard's been doing better recently. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of interest here for Memphis. It really just comes down to Jackson Jr. if he's in or out, because it really kind of opens up things if he's out. Moving on to the last two games here. Steph gets a great matchup here against Houston. Not really sure why he's 9,800. Going to be hard not to play him here. We know he's 100 plus upside. So I think Steph looks like a fantastic spin up for today at 9,800. 9,800, we're going back to the well here with him. Last time we played him, he put up 68.5 fantasy points for us. So really like Steph. I think Klay Thompson's at a very reasonable price tag. Hasn't been shooting the ball too great here. 15, 15, and 14. But his upside is definitely limited playing alongside Steph, but he could still have a good game. So I don't mind him. Poole, I guess he's in that interesting range as well. We could definitely take a shot at him, but still, it's really just Steph and Klay for me. Draymond, I think I'd rather go to him over Poole just because he does have that like poor man's triple double upside with like 10, 10, and 10. So I don't mind him. DiVincenzo's decent, seen anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes. Looney is questionable. If he's out, if he's in, I think he's a decent value play. If he's out, it's just more minutes for a guy like Kuminga. We could definitely get some more minutes for a guy like JaMychal Green off the bench. You could definitely force him his value. Don't feel great about that. Lamb is also a decent value play there at 3,200 as well. Moving on to Houston. I don't mind KPJ now that the price is up. He looks decent. Green's coming off the big game there, 6,800. I don't mind him, but he's also just super, super score independent. Sengun's decent. Smith, it's no real standouts. They're all just kind of there. Martin, I think he'd probably be my favorite. Seen about 30 minutes, but yeah, I mean, they're all kind of priced about right. No real standouts to me. Then moving on to Sacramento and Utah, another great game to game stack here. Sabonis 10-4. He's been great recently, as you can see, pretty much averaging a triple double the past like week and a half. Fox's price has really plummeted, coming off of two very, very bad games. I do like Fox going out here at 8,200. Monk 5,500. He's okay, coming off a few good games. It's helped that Herter has been hurt, which that's the big news there. Same thing with Trey Lyles. If they're both out, it's just more minutes for Barnes, Murray, Monk. They did start Terrence Davis, or they didn't start him, but he came off the bench, played 29 minutes. He was super, super good there, but he's super, super risky. I do think a lot of people are going to try to jam him in if Herter is out again, and he could be one of those guys where he only sees 10 to 15 minutes, especially if he doesn't start again. They did start Kessler Edwards, only played 19 minutes, so I think it's not too safe to go to Kessler Edwards. I think I'd rather take that shot on Davis or just play Malik Monk, who should be in line for more minutes, but as we saw last game, it did blow out, so he did lose some minutes there, but hopefully he'd be in line for mid-20s, maybe closer to 30 minutes. So I think right now my favorite play would be Fox, followed by Sabonis and Monk. Yeah, that's going to do it for the Sacramento side. Moving on to the Utah side here. Laurie, questionable, 9,100. If he's out, not really sure who they'd throw in there for him. Maybe Fontecchio, maybe JTA. I mean, it could get gross. I'm assuming he's good to go, that he should be able to play. If he is, he's just always a super contrarian spin up option that no one really likes to play, and he's just always been very, very solid. So I don't mind him as a play there. Kessler's priced about right. Same thing with Horton Tucker. Atlantic, sure. I mean, yeah, everyone's kind of priced about right here in a very solid matchup. If I had to pick two, it'd probably be Laurie and probably Horton Tucker. So yeah, as you can tell, there's a lot to like here on this board and slate today. A lot of great plays, a lot of people who are priced down way too cheap. A lot of good center plays, a lot of good guard plays. So I think right now this is what I'm liking: Brunson, Oubre, Richards, Steph, and Miles Turner. Also, I mean, as I mentioned, Mitchell Robinson looks very, very solid here as a GPP center play. Just a ton of good plays. So make sure to hit that like button, check out my Pipes Picks video, and I'll see you guys in the next slate breakdown.